All right, welcome everybody to July's Panvala Town Hall. This is kind of our flagship monthly event where you can learn everything there is to know to succeed in Panvala, to learn what's going on, to ask questions, to discuss what we should do next. That's really the whole point here, to be a monthly touch point where we can all get together and chart the path forward together. We want to make this as interesting and exciting for you as possible. So like we want it to be a place where you can come and discuss things. We want it to be a place where like what's on your mind can be what we talk about, because we want to hear from you and just have a fun time hanging out while we talk about what we're doing at Panvala as well. Right now we have 59 communities in Panvala. We grew from 49 communities last quarter to wait, not 49. I think it was 42 communities last quarter to 59 this quarter. I forgot the exact numbers. We're 59 now. We want to continue to grow. Again, the goal with Panvala is to be a network of thousands of communities. So it's good to see more and more communities joining. If there's other communities that you want to work with that aren't here yet, bring them in. We want to work with them. We want to share Panvala with them. We want to share it with as many communities as possible. Um, so the rough agenda for what the plan of what we'll go over here is a recap of this past donation matching round. The next steps for new communities, if you haven't participated in Panvala before, just getting your bearings and knowing what to do next. And then discussing a new way to earn PAN from sponsorships that are being proposed, and then opening it up for discussion and Q&A on any of that stuff. Again, like feel free to ask questions. I think we're gonna get to everything. So if something comes to mind that you want to talk about, let's make that happen. Let me go ahead and drop the link to this presentation in the chat so you can see it. All right, here's the link to the slides. Let me get this up and running. All right, so starting with a recap of this donation round. So donations closed on July 1st. That was this past Thursday. We had a little over 2 weeks of donations. Over that time, the communities in the Panvala League brought in 125,000 PAN of donations, which is about $11,000 in US dollar value. The total amount of PAN that we're allocating this quarter from the quarterly inflation is about 1.2 million PAN. So that's where that multiplier comes from. Like for every PAN that a community received, on average across the Panvala League, they're going to get 9.8 PAN in total funding. That's really how we kickstart this network of thousands of communities, by using Panvala's inflation to match donations for the communities that participate and sharing it with as many communities as possible. We want it to be as easy of a sell as possible for new communities to join us by driving more resources their way, using the inflation of our system to kickstart that. So seeing that we can match their donations at 9.8x this quarter is a pretty good thing to see, and we want to continue being able to drive resources to communities over time. For a view of what the donations look like across Panvala, these are kind of the top 10, 11 communities in donations this quarter. You can find more of those, more of that data in the scoreboard spreadsheet that's linked at the bottom of the slide. There's a lot going on there, so if it's a little bit overwhelming, don't worry too much about that. If anybody wants me to walk you through the spreadsheet, I'm always down to do that. I want more people to understand what's going on there. But this is kind of extracted from that spreadsheet just to see the communities that have brought in the most in donations. So People's Cooperative was at the top this quarter. That's a community out of Nigeria that collects donations and funds things locally. They brought in 74 donations and ended up getting like 10% of the quadratic funding score, which means that's where the more people you have donating, the more matching you get. So you can see that they didn't actually bring in the most in donations. They brought in about 14,000 PAN, but they got it from more people than second place community. So that's what gives them more matching. So DAP node was in second, and Gitcoin was in third. Gitcoin, as most of you are aware, like a lot of people choose when they make donations on Gitcoin to support Gitcoin itself when they do that. And when they do that, that gets matched by Panvala if the donation was made in Pan. So they came in third, mostly using that method. So again, all the community's data is in that spreadsheet, and then each community actually has their own page that breaks things down a little bit more, and I'll get to that in a second. So this is kind of an excerpt from Giveth's page, which is at panvala.com/Giveth. Kind of gives an overview of their results. So they brought in a little over 9,000 Pan. They brought it in from 43 donors. And currently, based on the amount of Panvala that their community owns, they're earning 6.3x matching on the donations they brought in. They can increase their matching multiplier by either getting more people who already own Pan to support their community, or by getting more Pan themselves to support their community. They can increase their Pan holdings by up to 427,000, and that's what would give them that 13.3x matching instead of 6.3x matching right now. So that's kind of how the staking part works. And matching, like the way we allocate resources in Panvala is a combination of participation and ownership. The participation for this program is how many donations did you bring in and from how many people? And that's what gives you how much there is to match in the first place. And then it's about how much does your community own, and that determines your matching multiplier. So it's participation and ownership that determines how we allocate the inflation each quarter. Any questions on what's going on in these images here? Cool. So just as another quick example, while people are here, I'm going to pull up page for NFDAO, which is another new community that joined this quarter. So again, they brought in 890 Pan from 9 donors. Based on just what they raised, they're currently earning 3x matching. So that's without any other Pan that they got on their own. The donations count as part of the part of Panvala that you own. So you get matching no matter what. If you brought in donations, you're getting some matching. They could get more Pan if they want to increase it up to their community's maximum of 17.3x. And that's generally how it works. Each community has a page like this. They're all linked from panvala.com. So if you just find community on panvala.com and click on the community's name, it's going to take you to your community's page with your information, and you can see where your community currently stands. So that's really the summary of what's going on in the complicated spreadsheet with all the rules. Is this simplified version, which is hopefully understandable. If it's confusing to you at all, we want to answer all your questions. We want it to make sense. So the next thing on here is the schedule for actually distributing the matching for this quarter. So July 30th is when the first roughly third of the matching is going to be distributed. So basically, once we hit Friday, that's when we're going to start taking the daily staking snapshots. So every day we look at the blockchain, we look at ZK Sync, we look at everywhere people have Pan. We see what's in each account for everybody that has said, I want to support NFDAO or I want to support grassroots economics, whatever. We total all that up and we use that to calculate your daily matching. So on July 30th, we distribute the first 4 weeks of that process. On August 27th, which is roughly a month later, we do the same thing again. On October 1st, which is roughly 5 weeks later, we do it again with the remaining 5 weeks. So the last one is a little bit bigger because we do 4 weeks, and then 5 weeks because we're in a 13-week cycle. But those are the dates around which you can expect the matching Pan to hit your community's wallet from the inflation of the system. Any questions on the matching schedule?
I have a question on dates, Naran. I'm slightly concerned we might have screwed up here at Dandelion. My understanding is that well, I was going by the Gitcoin round 10 dates, which says Gitcoin round 10 closes July the 7th. But I've just seen your last weekly memo says that Panvala's donation matching round is until July the 1st, with the staking cycle beginning on July the 2nd. Are those dates all right? And is it the case that Panvala's cycle is this time different to Gitcoin's?
So our goal is to always match the cycle on Gitcoin. So my understanding was that Gitcoin's round 10 ended on July 1st. And from the website, it looks like that's when it ended. So I don't know where the July 7th date is coming from.
Oh,
but I think it's
okay. Let's see. The page I was on there is grants round 10 hackathon, but maybe that's different to dates for their grants. Aha, right, got you. Okay. Due to that, the fact that Gitcoin's hackathon rounds is different to dates of their grant rounds, and just me kind of not glancing at that site and putting the wrong date in my calendar, we haven't actually converted our fiat donations into Pan at this point. And anyway, I don't want to take up everyone's time, but maybe that's something we can have a chat about at the end.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, Panvala is governed by the communities that participate. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to reach out to the existing communities. We're going to say, hey, this is the issue that happened with Dandelion. Do we want to accept this late donation? And if people are okay with that, we're going to go ahead and include that, and we'll just update the spreadsheet to match. Okay. Since nothing is distributed until July 30th, we have roughly 3 weeks or so to fix anything that went wrong, as long as it's the consensus of the communities in the league. So
Great.
It's not a disaster yet, as long as people are comfortable making that adjustment.
Sure, thanks.
No problem.
Naran, Naran, I'm just using your Calendly link, and I'm just going to ask my questions later today in a 15-minute meeting.
That totally works.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, we have I checked our line of data, and I think there might be some things missing. So I just want to double check it with you.
That's exactly what that's for. Like if you look at your either the spreadsheet or you look at your page on panvala.com and something looks off, we want to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
No, I audited it, and now I'm like, okay, I'll meet with you later and we'll check like this.
That's exactly how we want it to work. Definitely, if every community should at least take a look at their page, make sure that it matches what they think should be there. And if not, I can lead you through the data. All the data that it's generated from is in that spreadsheet. So we'll walk through, we'll find out what's missing, and we'll fix it, and everybody will be happy and it'll be great.
Awesome.
Any other questions? All right, let me get this shared in. All right, so the next step for especially new communities that haven't had all their community members already register at panvala.com/staking is to ask your community to do that. By default, the only tokens that are staked are the tokens that were donated to your community. So we automatically count those as staked. But really, if you want to increase your matching multiplier, you need tokens from your community. Your community has to be owners of Panvala to benefit from Panvala, because our benefits are allocated based on participation and on ownership. So if you look at your page, you see your matching multiplier and you're like, I wish our matching multiplier was higher. The way you do that is by looking at this number, the pan needed for maximum matching, deciding how much progress you want to make on that, and then reaching out to people and saying, hey, if you get this much pan, we get this much more matching. Do you want to do that? So you just ask your community to support you the same way you ask them to donate. There's 2 ways to support a community in Panvala. One is by donating, and one is by staking to increase the matching multiplier. And it's really similar sort of processes to get people to do both. You ask people to donate, you ask people to stake, and that's how you get the most out of Panvala. On July 9th, which is this Friday, that's when we're going to start resuming the daily staking snapshots. So new communities kind of have a week to get things sorted. And then once Friday hits, we start taking those daily staking snapshots again and allocating the next distribution based on each day's balances. As far as another next step you can take is to get help. So if you don't understand what's going on, you can ask questions in the Panvala League Telegram group. If you're not in the Panvala League Telegram group, let us know and we'll add you. But you can ask questions in there and get things done that way. And if you need more help, if text isn't doing the trick, you can definitely just book a meeting and we'll get on a call and figure things out. My Calendly link is right there, and just book some time and we'll figure it all out. Another next step to take is to get more involved. So make sure that you're like plugged into our communication channels, like the Panvala Twitter, the Panvala Observer newsletter that comes out every week and covers like what's going on in different communities. And then the Token Holders Association, which is where we try to put all the information about the day-to-day activity of running Panvala itself. If you want to participate in that, if you want to participate in committees, that's where that happens. You can also join a group like those committees that I was talking about. There's basically the most active committees right now are the membership committee, where we help reach out to new potential communities and get them on board. And also the marketing and events committee, where we help spread the word about Panvala, get events scheduled, help other communities with their events. And more recently, the budget committee is going to have more activity because of the sponsorship work that I'm going to get into later in this deck. And then lastly, attend events. If you're coming to events like this one, that's a great way to get involved. There's a weekly poker game that we have every Wednesday in Discord at 3 p.m. Eastern. If you're interested in just hanging out and having fun with people, that's a good way to do that. And there's a bunch more events on events.panvala.com from communities across Panvala. Really spending time with other people and enjoying other people's company is really what community life is all about. We're trying to make community life have more resources at its disposal. So the more you participate in community life, the more we can fund that. And that's what we want to do here. And lastly, you can help to grow Panvala. If there's communities that you like, that you enjoy working with, we want you to bring them to Panvala so we can work with them too and share what's going on here with those communities. If you have sponsors that support your community, you can bring those sponsors to Panvala and they can earn Pan when they support you. So instead of just giving you money and your community liking them, we can also give them Pan so they get more of a bang for their buck when they're supporting you. And also bringing new sponsors to Panvala is something you can do. The same way that we subsidize the communities in Panvala using the inflation of the token supply, we also subsidize sponsors. When sponsors decide to support Panvala, right now that has zero net cost because we completely subsidize it to get it off the ground. So if there are potential sponsors that you think would be a good fit to support Panvala and the communities in our network, we want you to bring them on board. We subsidize their sponsorship and we grow our network of communities and sponsors. Any questions on those next steps before I dive into the sponsorships piece? All right, let's talk sponsorships. So, so far in Panvala, a lot of what we've been doing is based on the inflation of Panvala's token supply, and it's been really cool. Right now, we subsidize communities the same way that Bitcoin subsidizes its security. If you're familiar with the way Bitcoin works, every 10 minutes, they're creating new Bitcoins to reward the miners that are making the network run. There's no giant foundation or wealthy donors like making Bitcoin work. It's just the existing holders that are diluting themselves to fund the operations of the network. And it's pretty cool. If you hold Bitcoin, you're kind of a philanthropist in a weird sort of way. So thank you for doing that. In Panvala, we do the same thing. We just want to generalize it. We think this is a new form of philanthropy that can fund really anything we want rather than just a blockchain network. So when you hold PAN, you're being diluted every quarter up to the maximum supply of 100 million. And that's where the matching that kickstarts the network comes from. When we say, hey, you're being matched by 9.8x, where does that come from? Right now, that comes from inflation. But again, that inflation is going to taper off at some point. So we don't want to subsidize from inflation forever. We want external subsidies to be what's going to the communities. And that external subsidy in Panvala is corporate sponsorships. So to walk you through kind of the flow of what's going on here, right now, this is where we are. There's no sponsors involved right now. It's just the token supply going to communities. So each quarter, PAN tokens are released from the token supply, and that goes to communities. And that's what people are currently enjoying from Panvala today. Our 59 communities share the inflation to match their donations. What we're moving to this quarter is to including sponsors in the mix. So what sponsors do is they buy PAN from communities. So when if a community needs like common currencies to fund their work, like Ether or dollars, they sell their PAN, and the people who are buying them are the sponsors that we bring on board. The sponsors are buying the PAN to support our network of communities, and our communities support the sponsors in return by saying, hey, like this company is a sponsor of Panvala. This is where our resources come from. We want to drive as much value back to sponsors as they're driving to our communities. So that's what we're moving to starting now, more or less. The third step that completes the cycle that we want to eventually get to, this is the part that we're not starting now, is that sponsors return a portion of the PAN that they purchase to the token supply. That's what completes the cycle. There's tokens coming out of the token supply, goes to communities. Sponsors buy PAN from those communities, and then sponsors put the PAN back into the token supply to complete the cycle. The reason that we're not doing that third part yet is because, like everything in Panvala, we subsidize things to kickstart it. So without that third step, sponsors are just buying PAN and they get to keep it. That's completely subsidizing their sponsorship. There's zero net costs when you do sponsorships this way. They're buying PAN from communities and they get to keep the PAN. If the PAN maintains its value, their net cost is zero. If the PAN goes down in value, then there is a net cost. But there's, to start with, there's zero net cost. As we introduce the requirement to return a portion of the purchase PAN into the token supply, that's how we reduce that subsidy. So as we grow our network of sponsors, we slowly require them to say, hey, for every 10 PAN you buy from communities, you got to put 1 back into the token supply. And then as we grow more, we reduce it even more. We say for every 10 PAN you buy, you got to put 5 back into the token supply. So we're only subsidizing your sponsorship by half at that point. And then eventually, every 10 PAN you buy, you put 9 back into the token supply. That's only a 10% subsidy. You're getting to keep 1 PAN for every 10 you buy. And then at the end of the day, when we've built out this network of sponsors, built out this network of communities, we reduce that subsidy for sponsors to 0. And it's just for everything they're buying from communities, they're putting it back into the token supply. And that's what completes the cycle that makes Panvala work. So that's what step 3 is. We're eventually going to do that. But to start with, we're here. It's completely subsidized to start with. Sponsors buy PAN from communities. They get to keep it. And we express our gratitude for the sponsors that support what we do here. So before I move on from that cycle, anybody have any questions on how this token cycle works?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So is there I understand that there's like a subsidized period. So there's inflation, because I was also wondering like how do you determine how much inflation there's going to be each quarter? And the matching seemed extremely high, like considering like, like incentives, like 2 times matching is enough of an incentive, but we got 9 times matching, and I was trying to figure out why. And it's like, oh, because there was a set amount of inflation. So it just happened that because there were fewer communities, those communities like each got like a bigger piece of a pie that was like for them. So like, I guess like the incentive is like get in early, be part of the matching early for new communities, be a pioneer. But also, so that was one question. but I sort of figured it out. But then I am curious, like, because we grew from like 42 communities to 59 communities, and like we've had, I don't know what cycle this is that we're in, but is there like a timer that goes off when like it's not safe for us to not have sponsors? Like, is there like a graph? I'm like imagining like we need to have sponsors by the time we get to here, because otherwise it's too expensive for us to distribute that much matching. Like it starts to harm the value of the token. I'm not an economist, but I'm sure you have like some sort of like timeline of like when we run out of time to use the inflation and when we have to start, like you said, closing the loop.
These are great questions. So when it comes to how much we match each quarter, you're right that that's basically baked into the system. So we use a half-life of 4 years for our inflation curve, the same way Bitcoin does. So that's where that number is coming from. We just ask the blockchain how many tokens are going to come out next quarter, and the blockchain tells us. We don't decide, it's just a thing that happens. The reason for that is because we're trying to get tons of communities to work together. And the more decisions we have to make, the harder it is to work together. So by taking the Bitcoin approach, where it's an algorithmic, just a preset curve of what the inflation is going to be, that makes having to reach agreement on how much subsidy is appropriate, that makes that problem go away. For example, imagine if Bitcoin had to decide what if the community had to debate what the subsidy should be every so often, every year, like what should the subsidy be? Like it would be a contentious debate every time because everybody has something at stake and everybody has different opinions about what the right subsidy should be. But since it's just fixed, the whole culture of the Bitcoin community is this is what we do and it's fine. Like if you asked people if there was no subsidy and you said, hey, let's subsidize at this rate, they would all say no. They would never agree to do what they're currently doing. But that's the approach that we're trying to mimic to get lots and lots of people to agree. Just decide up front, this is what the subsidy is going to be. So that's how that works. So yes, the subsidy is high. If we were trying to debate what a subsidy should be, we would not choose 9.8x, so we would probably choose something lower because you probably don't need that. But we intentionally don't do that because we want to produce mass cooperation. We want to get as many communities to work together as possible, and debating that would make it harder for us to do that. So we chose not to.
That makes a lot of sense that there would be, and I'm just going to interject, but then yeah, let's go back to the other question. That makes a lot of sense. You wouldn't have like a subjective mechanism because you'd always have to be reevaluating it. But there are some like misaligned incentives like in that, which is like less involvement or less donations means that the people who get donations get more of the inflation. So yeah.
So that's true in a sense because like basically the theory behind it is if there are more donations flowing through the system in like US dollar value, then maybe the market's perception of the value of PAN changes as a result. So it's not supposed to be like, oh, there are more donations, so now there's less matching. Like really, it's supposed to reach some sort of equilibrium in terms of when you're thinking about it in terms of the number of PAN. Like the US dollar value can change over time, but the PAN is supposed to stabilize. The flow of PAN is supposed to stabilize. Right now it's early, so it's very volatile. Last quarter, it was 2x matching. This quarter, it's 9.8x matching. Like that's crazy, right? The idea over time is it stabilizes in PAN terms, then the volatility shifts to potentially US dollar terms. The idea, we don't know if that'll happen, but that's the hypothesis.
Okay.
So the other question you had about timeline, like when do we need sponsors? So that kind of is also something that we're taking inspiration from Bitcoin for. Like the idea behind Bitcoin was that, hey, we're going to taper off the inflation over time, but eventually transaction fees are going to pay for this. for the network to run when the inflation isn't high enough anymore. And that's what we've been saying since Bitcoin launched in 2009. It's 2021 now. It's been 12 years. It's still working on inflation without transaction fees making up the predominant source of income for the miners. So if that model can be replicated, then maybe you have 12 years plus to go in Panvala before you need external subsidies to make the system work. That's kind of the way we think about it. Again, there's no guarantees there because we don't know if, but there's two things we don't know. We don't know if Bitcoin's model is like generalizable in that way. And we also don't know if it just applies to what we're doing in that same way. So it could be a decade or two of runway that we have before we need external subsidies. It could be not that. But either way, we want to build up that the habits, the practices that are necessary to be sustainable for the long run. Even if it's early for us to start bringing in sponsors, like we need a culture that can sustain what we need to be doing in the long run, rather than having to shift. It's like, hey guys, emergency! The inflation isn't enough anymore. Bring in sponsors. We never want to be doing that. So instead, we start really early and we start to ramp up the sponsors. So it's just a thing that's always there.
Okay, that clarifies. Thank you. So it's not like tomorrow. It's not like 3 months from now. Pan doesn't have value because we didn't get any sponsors in 2021.
I personally don't think that we're in any sponsorship emergency, but okay. No guarantees. Cool. Any other questions? All right. So the general idea behind corporate sponsorships in Panvala is that there's already this giant flow of value in our economy that we can probably redirect. So if you think about what's going on right now, when businesses want more customers to come in the door, they go to Google and Facebook and they put their entire marketing budget there. And the reason they do that is because Google and Facebook are saying, hey, like all your potential customers are here. Give us some money. We send those customers to you. And they're like, okay, that sounds good. Let's do that. And it works. We think you can redirect that flow of value. Instead of enriching Google and Facebook, we think you can get those same businesses to put that same money directly into the budgets of the communities their potential customers spend time in. We want businesses to be funding communities to get customers in the door. But to be able to do that, we have to be able to answer the same question that Google and Facebook do. We have to be able to say, hey, all your potential customers are here. Put your money there. We send you customers. And a single community can't do that. It's very hard for a single community to say, we're going to be able to effectively drive business back to you for the sponsorship dollars you pay. But a network of thousands of communities can say that pretty effectively. We have a lot of potential customers. We send them your way. You fund our communities. And that's kind of the way we redirect that value. If we can provide as much value for businesses as Google and Facebook do, that money can go, instead of enriching Google and Facebook, can go to funding communities. From my perspective, it's the kind of organization that should really exist. There should be a way to get a whole bunch of communities to work together to get funds from wherever possible. But before blockchain technology, before cryptocurrencies, it's hard to kickstart that kind of thing. If you said, hey, we're going to be a network of thousands of communities, but the communities would say, what can you offer us today? And you have no sponsorships on day one, so it doesn't really work. But with Panvala, we could say, hey, we have this inflation. We can match your donations on day one. And we've been doing that. And that's why we have 59 communities sharing this system. It's easier to kickstart this kind of organization using our current technology. And that's why now is the moment to create this kind of organization. That's why the story of what crypto technology does to society is going to be about taking that flow of value, it's going to tech monopolies and shifting it to go to communities where it really should have been going the whole time. Any questions on that part? All right. So what we want to shift to for this quarter is we want to allocate a portion of Panvala's inflation to go to the communities that provide value for sponsors, more or less. The communities that highlight the sponsors that are supporting them, we want to give them pan for doing that. So if you think about last quarter, 75% of the inflation went to donation matching. 25% of the inflation went to Panvala light work, like some of the engineering work that has to get done, the different services that we pay for on a monthly basis, that kind of stuff. Next quarter, what we want to shift to is 50% of the inflation going to donation matching and 25% going to sponsor rewards. So what those sponsor rewards are depends on what your community wants to do. Because at the end of the day, everything about how sponsors work in Panvala is stuff that your community chooses. There's nothing about like, oh, your community is part of Panvala, so you have to do this. It's not like a command and control organization. It's really about creating a menu of things you can do and rewards for those things, and you choose what you do. That's already how the donation matching works. We don't say, hey, you have to do this because you're part of Panvala. We just say, hey, this is what's available to you. If you do this, you'll get this much pan from the inflation. That's exactly how we want the sponsors to work. So your community chooses which sponsors you want to support. Your community chooses how your community supports sponsors. Maybe you like highlight the sponsors at the beginning of your meetings or something. If your community has a podcast, maybe you're like, hey, you say something about the sponsor on your podcast. Maybe you have a website and you're like, hey, we're supported by this company. Like your community chooses the way you support sponsors. And then as Panvala, as the Panvala League, you participate in choosing how we divide sponsor rewards between communities. So that's why we've set aside that 25%. That's why I'm proposing that we set aside that 25% of the inflation for sponsor rewards so we can start to put together the rules of how we want to do this. Because there's no way for me to know what different communities are comfortable with doing, what they are excited about doing, how we should reward different kinds of things. That's a thing that we kind of have to do together. So if we start by experimenting with a portion of the inflation and setting the rules for that, we can grow that over time. So if you want to be more involved in how we decide the rules for how sponsors work in Panvala, the budget committee is where that happens. The same way there's that giant spreadsheet for the donation matching program with rules that decide how much you get matched when you do that. We want to create a spreadsheet for the sponsorship rewards where it's like, hey, your community highlighted this sponsor in a call that had this many attendees, and you highlighted this sponsor in a video that had this many views. As a result, you get this many points and you get this much of the sponsor awards. Those rules are what the budget committee does. And if you want to be part of that, we want your help to help craft this together. So that is all I had. There is a lot of new stuff in that sponsors part. A lot of communities are new to Panvala and probably have questions about how to get the most out of Panvala this quarter. There's also lots of stuff going on in the crypto world adjacent to our communities that's relevant to us all. We want this to be a place for us to be able to discuss really anything you want to talk about. So if you have any questions about what I went over or things that you personally want to discuss with this particular crowd, this is the time and the place to make that happen.
Niran, I have a question. So I was just looking at, I want to go back to Meta Gamma Delta and NFDAO and report to them and then also encourage them to do actions. So the amount of matching that it shows there is different from what's on your spreadsheet. So one thing I don't know if it's possible, but I wish that sheet showed some kind of time-based thing. Like it doesn't tell me, it just says, yeah, you know, a great match, like we've maxed our matching, which is amazing. But then it kind of says 0 pan is needed. And then if I just post that, people are going to be like, great, we already did it. we're done. So I want to make sure that it kind of gives like sort of incentive over time, or that I explain it well to say why. For instance, I don't think a lot of people do not understand that you can hold PAN on behalf of your community. And that strikes me as a piece of information I've been trying to communicate as soon as I learned it. So anyway, I wish that that sort of showed some sort of time-based thing, so it doesn't look like, yay, it's done. That's one thing. My question is, what's the difference between the period where we maxed our donation? Did that have to do with the recent Gitcoin grant round, or did that have to do with overall time and we had a less percentage lately? We didn't do a big fundraise in this latest grant round.
So that that maxing out your matching multiplier, everything your page shows right now is just for this quarter. So it's not showing anything for the past. It's just a snapshot for right now. Like as of right now, there's nothing that Meta Gamma Delta does not need more PAN to get more matching. Like more donations are always useful, but again, those don't count anymore for this past quarter. They count for next quarter. So
Okay.
as far as action items for Meta Gamma Delta, it's really just to be aware of where they stand. Like if people like Meta Gamma Delta has been accumulating PAN over this time from the matching program, and now the payoff is now like you've maxed out. You can, when you bring in PAN donations, you get a higher multiplier than most communities get. So that's really just where MGD stands in Panvala. Over time, like again, for like the next quarter or two, the idea is that there's more of a call to action about the sponsors as well, because instead of just being a donation matching program, it's really there's a sponsorship program as well, because what Panvala isn't either of the programs. Panvala is the network of communities, it's the network of sponsors, and then the way we divide the benefits of Panvala is the donation matching and the sponsor awards. So there's always going to be stuff to do once it's not about the quarterly matching rounds alone. When it's about the sponsors as well, it's going to be like, hey, let's here's where we stand when it comes to sponsorships. Is there anybody else that we want to highlight? Is there any other opportunity that we have in what we do as a community to be able to earn sponsor awards for highlighting some of the sponsors of Panvala?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I also want to encourage people to become a holder of PAN on behalf of their community.
Mhm.
I think that's really interesting idea that you can be staked in that way.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think it's going to be especially useful as Panvala grows, because right now, like there's a lot of people who are in Meta Gamma Delta. Meta Gamma Delta doesn't necessarily need more PAN right now, but as Panvala grows, there's going to be more communities in that network, and it's your PAN at the end of the day. So if Meta Gamma Delta doesn't need more PAN, and there's another community that you care about that has joined Panvala as we grow, then you're going to be able to use that to support that community as well. So if there are people in Meta Gamma Delta that like what's happening with Panvala right now, and they want to help Panvala grow to benefit other communities they're a part of, having PAN is going to help them drive resources to the communities that they're a part
of. That means you're saying you can hold PAN yourself and stake that on other communities, but Meta Gamma Delta's PAN isn't staked to other communities, right? You're Correct. Saying, oh, I see. You're saying individuals can, yeah. So for instance, Meta Gamma Delta doesn't need more PAN, so I can stake my PAN to Jovian, for instance, because I want to help them build.
Okay. Exactly. And again, like Panvala is about much more than just crypto communities. Like that's what we are right now, but we want to continue to grow beyond that. So if we successfully grow beyond that, it's not just something that you can use to support crypto communities. It's like everybody has communities they're a part of. So having PAN is going to be a resource that they can use to support any community they want.
Did Crypto Kids Camp jump on? That's a side question, but did they jump on? I want them to. They need to.
They did not. We definitely want to reach back out to them. We love what they do. We'd love to help support them, but
did they just not get around to it, or did they decline?
They didn't decline, but it's always hard to distinguish a polite, oh, we'll get back to you on that, wink wink, from
I don't think that. I'm going to tell them they have to do it. That's all. I'll do that today.
That sounds great.
To do Panvala Link. They're crazy if they don't. They just need to be doing it. It's easy. It's a slam dunk.
I'm glad you see it.
I have, I don't know if this is useful, but I could use myself as like a guinea pig and like show you my, like log into my staking and just kind of say like, here's what I did. And like, this may apply to other people too. Because I think what Anne brought up is really, really important, because staking for your community is really different than donating to your community. Because like I can stake my funds for the organization that I'm a part of, right?
Yes.
But I don't necessarily want to donate a whole bunch of my own funds, because that's like putting money in the treasury that I might need to spend later. So I'm like giving up some level of control that isn't good for me as an individual. But as an individual, I'm happy to put tons of money into Pan, or just like extra, like sit money in an investment in Pan. That's like totally comfortable for me. Whereas I can only donate so much, because that's like handing it over to the organization that has its own financial structures and stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna like just share, because maybe this is a good, oh, can I share my screen?
Yes, let me give you the permission. All right, you can do it now.
Okay. Yeah, like, okay, so here is the staking page, right? So here's some Pan that's there, right? But that is different from what is in the spreadsheet. Oops, sorry guys. Here's the spreadsheet. So where do these, so these are staked tokens and these are donated tokens.
Correct.
So how are they different and similar?
So the Pan donated goes into your community's wallet, right? So by default, we always stake your community's wallet for your community. So as long as those donations were received and still sitting there, that 2,934 Pan is part of the 43,379 your total staked tokens. The 25,000 Pan that you saw on your screen is also a part of what's in that staked tokens total. So the difference means that there are other people besides you and Jovian's wallet that are supporting Jovian with their balance. We take the total balance of every account that has said, I support Jovian. We take the total balance, we add it all up across any chain that the Pan is on. If it's on ZK Sync, it counts. If it's on mainnet, it counts. XI, everywhere, it counts. And we total that up, and that's where that staked tokens number comes from.
Okay, so this has Pan donated in it. And it also has staked tokens from anyone who's staked tokens for Jovian.
Yes, the one caveat there is, let's say your community gets some donations and then spends it, then you would still have 2,934 Pan donated, but that wouldn't necessarily be staked anymore because it's not in the account anymore. In your case, it's still in the account, so that's included in that total. If it wasn't there anymore, you would still have credit for 2,934 Pan donated, but it wouldn't count for staked anymore because that's the balance today. Each day, what's in that account is what's staked.
Okay, that is helpful. I was gonna ask you what all these other columns are for, but I guess I can do that later on the call.
Yeah, I'd love to walk you through the spreadsheet. There's a rough version of a walkthrough on the Panvala handbook, handbook.panvala.com. It goes over an older version of the spreadsheet, so not every column is in there, particularly the bonus columns, because those are new. But every other column, it explains what each column is. It's still going to be hard to understand without a guide, but I'm willing to guide you through it to make sure you understand the details. The page on panvala.com for your community is a simplified version where it's just like, this is what you need to know. But for anybody who wants to understand the spreadsheet, I want you to understand the spreadsheet, because if we're going to reach consensus on it, the more people who understand it, the better. So like, if you're willing to volunteer to be one of the people who's the keeper of the knowledge of what's in the spreadsheet, I want to put that knowledge in your head.
Sounds good.
Any last questions or discussion topics for our remaining 4 minutes?
Just did a bit of tallying, and Dandelion has received what's that, around $25,000 from around 4,000 separate small donations. As in, I'm just conscious of last time this was yeah, I think we were at top or close to the top of the matching leaderboard, just because the way our business works, we do a great job at encouraging these small donations. Just saying that, especially given that there's been this misunderstanding around the dates and we're late, like happy to be sensitive to the fact that some organizations have already been told they're receiving a certain matching multiplier, and that yeah, we don't want to kind of people to be overly disappointed if Dandelion's submission is now going to significantly affect the matching multipliers of other organizations. At the same time, of course, like it's great to be able to purchase $25,000 worth of pan this round. So yeah, we can maybe catch up about that around after I've sent the figures through you.
Absolutely. Like, I think there's a model, especially with the sponsorships approach that I described in the slide in the deck, where we can kind of mitigate the impact to the matching multiplier if we treat it as a sponsorship instead. So we'll talk about it a little, get something that we agree on, and then try to see if we can reach consensus as a league.
Okay, right. Thanks.
All right. We have 2 minutes left. Any last thing before I let everybody go? All right. Thanks again, everybody, for coming. See you again next month. Again, there's lots of things to do in between these Panvala town halls. There's the coalition calls. So there's different groups of communities that have shared interests who decide that they want to work together. They have monthly meetings as well. If your community isn't part of a coalition, there's 5 current coalitions that you can find in the Panvala handbook. If one of the 5 existing ones doesn't fit you, we want to create new coalitions. Really, we want to help communities work together and spend time with each other, get value from cooperation is what we're all about. There's other events for other communities at events.panvala.com. If you want to see what the other communities are doing, dive into some of the interesting work that they have going on at events.panvala.com. What we're trying to do here is build a giant network of as many communities as possible to cooperate. And if we actually succeed in doing that, this like people have seen kind of the absurd amount of resources that go to tech monopolies today, and the giant towers that they build, the giant campuses that they build, etc. What we have the opportunity to do here is to direct an absurd amount of resources to community life, to every community that you're a part of and you participate in, to every community that people who are nothing like you participate in as well. If we can find ways to work together, both with people who are like each other and people who aren't, build a giant network of thousands of communities who work together, we can redirect those resources. Instead of community life being a sideshow to the political life and corporate life that dominate everything, I think we can make community life the main event, where people do the things they like with the people they like, using that absurd amount of resources that's flowing through the economy. It's just not going to your community. We can change where that goes together. So I'm really excited that you guys are here doing this with us, and we want to bring as many people here as possible. I think it's going to be a really fun 10 years or so as we build up what we're doing here to be able to make community life the main event. So thanks for being a part of it. See you again next month and in between.
Thanks,
Have a good one,
everybody.
everybody.